So, Brandon Eller, also known as the Liquid Light Wizard, you have one of the most fascinating crafts that I've seen. So, for those listening, you take various plates of glass and an analog overhead projector and colors and dyes and alcohols and other liquids, and you put it together to make this really psychedelic light performance. I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what got you into liquid lights in the first place? What made you start that art form?
It's kind of random. I had kind of an acquaintance on Facebook, and he went by the sub name or term oil, I guess. That was his liquid light name.
Yeah.
And he was moving to Panama, and he had a basic setup, and he was looking to get rid of it for free. And I just happened to see it like a minute or two after he posted it, something like that. And I was like the first person to come. I was like, I'll take it, and I'll use it, because he wanted someone to take it that would actually use it and not just store it away and forget about it. And so I jumped on it, and he just happened to live like less than 10 minutes away from me down in South Seattle. And so I went over to his place like 10 minutes later, whatever, like right away. He's like, yeah, come on over. And picked it up, or talked to him for like a brief moment. Like I was like, how do you use this? Because and he gave me like a quick 5-minute tutorial on how it works and how to set it up or whatever, and just how to basically do it. And I was like, all right, let's go. All right, I'll take it. And then that weekend, like it was a couple days later, I had a friend playing the show at the Blue Moon in U District. And I just showed up. I was going to go to the show anyway. And I just bought all the gear, and I was like, hey, do you guys want a liquid light show? And they were like, yeah. And so I just set it up and tested it out and went for it. And that was the first time I even used it. I never even practiced or anything.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you just went straight into this, and you're like, okay, this will be fun.
Yeah. Just throw myself into it and see what happens.
What was that experience like?
Oh, I mean, a little nervous and chaotic, especially because it's like, some people weren't expecting it. The sound guy wasn't necessarily seem happy, but that seems to be his normal case there at that venue. And so just made it happen. I mean, I just had, like I said, I didn't have like a screen or anything. I just bought the basic projector and the couple plates that he gave me and the basic colors and stuff like that. And yeah, he just had like food dye.
Yeah.
And I just did the best I could, and it was it showed up only so well and all that. But
of course, yeah.
One of the bands just happened to be wearing like white jumpsuits that night.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, was perfect if I would have had like ideal projectors or something. But so like that was just a coincidental, timings.
Okay, speaking of coincidences, it's so funny how like small incidental moments, like you happen to see your friend's post minutes after they posted it, change the trajectory of your life in ways that you couldn't have foreseen at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's common theme of my life, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's it like to actually do that? So can you explain in a little bit more detail, like your setup and how the different pieces fit together?
Yeah, so basically what I do is analog overhead projections. So I use old school projectors like you would probably have seen in like elementary or middle school. And so I use those boxes with the old projector style, and it basically the more lumens you have, the brighter it is, the better projection you'll get. So I look out for more like high-end or rare projectors for the better quality. And then on top of that is a convex clock glass, like you would see on a clock. And so you get different sizes of those with different convexes and shapes and all that stuff. And you can layer them inside of each other. So like a big one on the bottom, and then smaller as you kind of get on top of the different layers. Most of the time I'll just do two plates on one projector, but I've done up to like 4 before.
Wow. Okay.
But sometimes less is more though, really. And then inside those goes mineral oil and isopropyl alcohol, and then candle dyes and watercolors.
Okay.
The mineral oil will mix with the candle dyes will mix with the mineral oil, and the watercolors will mix with the isopropyl alcohol.
Okay.
And that's how you can keep 2 colors on the same plate or level. And so I can technically have 2 colors on each plate.
Okay.
And so like with 2 plates, I can actually have 4 colors, like mixing and overlapping each other. And then you can add another up to 2 colors per plate, pretty much. But I want to always do that. Sometimes I'll just do 1 color per plate still. Just like I say, sometimes less is more, because you can overdo it and stuff like that. But
Okay.
But that's the most basic kind of setup for what I do, I would say. There's more stuff I do beyond that, but
Okay, that's fascinating because I didn't think about having multiple colors per plate. I thought, you put the colors in and over time that all kind of dissolve and kind of meld into one color. But I think what you're hinting at is the different densities of the liquids and the solubilities, right? So that things you can kind of control how they combine and how they kind of play with each other.
yeah, because the mineral oil never mixes with the isopropyl alcohol. The
Yeah.
isopropyl is alcohol and water, and
Yeah.
so the water will evaporate, or the alcohol will evaporate, and you're left over with more of a water ratio.
Okay.
So you're constantly adding a little bit of alcohol to kind of keep that, and that's what helps separate and bubble the mineral oil. So like with the different ratios, you get different liquid viscosities and squishes and all that kind of stuff. So. Yeah, and then some people just use water instead of alcohol. They'll just do water and mineral oil, and that creates a totally different look as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I imagine each of these things, like you said, has wildly different properties. You're going to get different aesthetics. You're going to get different patterns. That's really cool. Okay. I imagine it took a bunch of trial and error to kind of get the style that you wanted down, to get the patterns that you wanted just right.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm always learning even to this day.
Okay.
I mean, there's lucky enough there was semi early on, I found a Facebook group called I think it's like psychedelic preservation group or something like that. But it's all about liquid light shows.
Okay.
And there's from people all over the world that are on this, and they talk about and they collaborate and give their tips and whatnot. And so I found that early on and was able to go through and kind of read about what people are already doing and how to do things differently and all that. And so that was a big help. But before I even found that, the only person really online that has any kind of tutorial or anything was a guy in New York, Steve Pavlovsky, who goes by Liquid Light Lab. And he does analog, but he also does a lot of digital. But he was the only person on the internet, whatever it was, 10-ish years ago, that broke down how to like basically build a plate from nothing, and how to get the right ratios and get it to do do all the stuff that, to learn off of from there. And so without that initial help, it would have taken me even longer to really just figure it out.
Oh, I'm
So,
sure. Yeah. Okay, because I feel like this. I mentioned earlier that this is one of the most niche art forms and crafts that I've seen. How many people do you think are in that community? Because if a decent amount or small, I'm trying to think. I'm comparing it to like other well-known groups because like think of guitarists. There are tens of millions of those. There's singers, even more of those. But like for this, I imagine it's kind of small. I guess you find people through Facebook groups, maybe a couple hundred members, stuff like that.
yeah, it is. It is small in regards to a lot of other things out there. So
Okay.
like when you compare it to something else, like where there's millions and people that sing or or whatever, play a sport, or something like that. Like it really is on a much smaller level than that. I would say, like in the group, I don't know how many are active, like members or whatnot. Like I would say maybe 1,000 or so, give or take, or like which is a lot. But I think a lot of those are just people who watch and like they're just part of the group. They're not really participating. They might not even do the liquid lights themselves. Out of the active people that might do it even as a hobby, maybe a couple hundred across at least in the United States. And when you go to other countries, it's hard for me to guess. But I see some of the bigger people from out of the country, like from Europe and stuff like that are on the group that actually do it like professionally.
Mhm.
But that's like a handful of people, like maybe 10 to 20 people, something
Yeah.
like that. In the United States, I think there's at least 20 to 40 people that are starting to do it like actually live, like semi-professionally nowadays. When I was started about 10 years ago, it felt like there was like 5 or 10 people. But there's a lot, but I'm realizing there's more out there than I even know about, because not everybody's posting on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
But in the last, like since probably just about COVID-ish time, 5-ish years ago, it's been an explosion, and there's been even more. So it's probably doubled or whatever. So
That's wonderful.
yeah, so there's a lot more people I've learning it and finding it and then trying it out. And more people trying to do it for shows and all that stuff as well.
Mhm.
Especially with the digital side. The digital is a lot more, I would say, modern, of course, and so a lot more people gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
The analog is a little more old school, forgotten tech.
Okay.
So that's a big separation, I would say, in it. But
How does the digital aspect of that work? Are they just trying to recreate the aesthetic of the analog, but now you have a computer and you can kind of play with these soft?
typically, what for the digital is they'll have like a light screen pad, and they'll do the same kind of stuff what I'm doing on that,
Mhm.
but instead of an analog projector, they'll just have like a camera mount or something like that. And
Ah,
like and they'll feed that into a digital projector, and then they can put it anywhere, point it anywhere. Where while otherwise I'm limited to like where my whole unit is at, and I can only angle it so much, and so I'm more
yeah.
limited in where I can position it and place it and project it and all that kind of
Uh,
stuff. But with the analog, you get a lot warmer. You get much warmer colors,
sure.
and the digital is just kind of cold
Okay.
and and which it's pretty obvious when you see it.
Okay.
But then there's also people who do, like, I've collaborated with people where like I'll have my analog projector, and I'll still do my projections and all that, but they'll put a camera mounted to do the video what I'm doing,
Mm.
and then do their own projection as well, either side by side or above it
Okay.
or whatnot, and then they can do things I can't do to it, like split it or Rorschach it and stuff like that. So it goes in and
Yeah.
out. So like I can spin my one plate, but it'll look like I'm spinning two of the same plate, like in and out of each other.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it can add digital effects and all that other stuff. So it's fun to collaborate with those, but it definitely has a different vibe.
Okay. So when we're referring to digital, the manipulation is still analog. They're still moving physical things with their hands. However, how it's projected, how the images are actually, represented, that gets manipulated digitally.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah.
that makes
Typically,
total sense.
I think there are some people that just take video and then
Of
they could
course.
say digital video, but that's
Yeah, there's endless different little niches and subcategories that people can go down, art form and the crafts. Yeah, endless possibilities.
yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. So if someone were to want to pick this up, how would they go about doing it? How would they go and find equipment? How would they find these Facebook groups and the community? How would they learn?
Yeah, well, there's that Facebook group I mentioned is probably one of the greatest sources to like get into first. There's even someone recently who's been posting on there who's actually from Hawaii, and he's like, "Hey, what do I want to get into this? What do I do? What do I look for?" and all that. And
Yeah.
immediately there's like a dozen people like, "Here you go. Here's all the here's some information, or here's where to start," and kind of thing. And I was one of the first people to comment on his post as well. And what I actually have like a cheat sheet that I wrote up by my hands, like a little scratch pad.
Yeah.
And I wrote down all my favorite projectors, where to get them, how much they cost,
Oh, okay.
the plates, the liquids, like everything. I have everything down to a reasonable detail of like where to get it, how much is it going to cost, and stuff like that. And so I just sent that to them, and that's probably really the best thing. Like, I bet of anybody I've seen, like, no one's done that.
Yeah.
No one has like, here you go. Here's the information in one sheet.
Yeah.
Everybody's like more like specific items. Like they'll just talk about projectors, but like no one has anything written down. And so I think, yeah, I'm probably one of the best sources to get into it. Honestly,
awesome.
I even try to teach local people how to do it.
Okay.
I've had quite a few students, but nobody's really taken off with it and done anything on their own.
Yeah.
Only a handful of them have even come back and helped me do lights when I do light shows. So it's definitely something I want to hand off and kind of pass on to more people, because I'd like to be able to go out to a show and not be the only one working. I want to go enjoy the show and not be the one committed to doing all the work. So that's one of my goals, is to get it more out there so I can enjoy it in public.
Yeah. I mean, I think education is so crucial for the preservation of an art form. One, to just make sure it continues existing, but also to see it grow. At least with my, so I'm a photographer by trade, and there are billions of, photography videos and like tips and tricks and stuff like that. But I specialize in fire photography, which is one, really fucking hard, and two, no one really covers it. So you can get concepts of how to do this, but like the actual practice, there's very few people teaching this with any degree of precision and detail. So I'm really glad that you exist in your space and have those same values to kind of pass this knowledge on to the next generation so that people can learn and hopefully their path is a little bit easier than what you had. That's great.
Yeah. No, and that's interesting to hear you to do the fire, because I can imagine fire videoing or picturing fire, taking pictures of fire is usually in the dark.
Yep.
And that's, I think, in my perspective, is probably the hard part about it. And that's a similar thing that I have issues with, people trying to take video or photos of my liquid lights. 'Cause
Right.
It's always in the dark. So it just seems, I know a few local photographers, and some of them are better at the dark side than others. Some of them actually specialize in doing dark photography.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how much that varies from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself taking this art form for yourself personally? What do you want to kind of do with it over the next couple of years?
Well, besides trying to get more people to do it for
Yeah.
me, because I don't really do shows much anymore.
Okay.
Because I just don't have the time with all my other businesses and hobbies.
Right.
So getting more people to do it so I can just enjoy it from a perspective, from
Okay.
otherwise, in my new tasting room in White Center that's coming, I'm actually going to build a permanent light installation.
Ooh.
And so not it's actually, I'm gonna have one in the bar that the bartender will be able to do.
Uh-huh.
But ideally, I want to set up another one somewhere in the tasting room area that
Yeah.
like everybody else can just come and mess around with as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that way it's always available, it's always set up, and and if we're open, it's probably on kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that way, so people can come. There's always a space where local people can come and test it out, try it out, practice whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that will help spark more interest in getting people to actually move forward with it instead of just doing it when I'm around.
I think that's huge because removing barriers and friction to people actually doing the thing is huge. Because, the silly advice when I wanted to learn how to play guitar was just simply have it in the room with you. So it's really easy to pick it up and just start going within, I don't know, 5 seconds. So you just grab it
Yeah.
because the convenience is there. Because I imagine for an art form like yours, the setup is probably a lot. It takes some time to, set up the projector and stack the plates and get all the, oils and alcohols and dyes and stuff together. It's a bit cumbersome, and the time from the motivation of I want to do this thing till you actually do it is probably, it can be significant.
Very much so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it takes me an easy hour to set it up,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
another hour to break it down, because there's a lot of cleaning and just getting things just right, and the everything has to be level. So like doing outdoor shows is hard because you have to get the level of the table and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So yeah, having it set up would be the most convenient. And even in my 10 years or whatever of doing this, um, I've never had a space to where I just had to set up really. I've never for at least the first 5 years of me doing light shows and almost doing one every month, if not every couple weeks.
Yeah.
I never practiced. It was just like my first show. Every single light show I ever did for my first 5 years was just set up at a show and go for it. And so I learned live. I learned doing it live.
Yeah.
Just throw myself in and just go for it. So when I finally had a small space, about a couple years ago, actually, like in my production space in Soto, I set up just an overhead and just had it there for like 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, and I actually practiced a little bit or whatever, and so that was but having the convenience to be able to do that, or someone to stop by and do it with me, like actually had more people to come and practice, or I actually practice a little bit more than I ever have. And so yeah, it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but having that space in your tasting room for people to just kind of go up and try the thing, because where else are they going to get exposed to this? They might see it online. They'll almost never touch and feel it unless someone like you comes along and sets up the space. And that convenience thing. So for context, this whole podcast setup, the lights, the cameras, the microphones, all that, it takes about an hour. I would love to have a space to where I could just leave this set up so I don't have to worry about that again. But this is also my kitchen slash dining room and I live here, so I can't do that. But yeah, I understand the pain points and the friction that you go through. What is the cleanup process like for all of this? Because you're dealing with glass and oil. I imagine it's a little messy and things get slippery. It could be difficult and cumbersome.
Oh yeah, I mean the biggest thing is just being careful not making a mess, because it
Sure.
is such a liquidy substance that, like, if you're not careful and if you spill it, then you have even more of a mess to clean up. So just being careful not to make a mess in the process of it is part of it. Um, it's just a lot of wiping down, like a lot of just
Yeah.
what I do is I basically take one plate at a time, and I'll tip it up, dump the excess oil into the plate below, wipe it down, take it down to my little garbage can, 5-gallon bucket, wipe off the excess into there with like a paper towel, and then put the plate aside, and then keep doing that with every plate. When I get to the bottom plate, then I take that and I dump all that oil into that garbage bag.
Yeah.
Wipe it down, set aside.
Okay.
And so it's basically just a lot of cleaning, a lot of this wiping down, cleaning, and just one step at a time.
Mhm.
And then there's an overhead projector. Usually there's a lot of overspill and splash from working it, doing the show. So then I have to wipe down the whole projector and all that, because I want to get it as clean as possible, because when it goes in my car, I'm not making a mess in my car
Of
as well.
course, yeah.
Or when I pull it back out, I'm like, oh, it's just already kind of semi ready to go, where I'm not
Yeah.
making them like, so like, because if I grab my projector, even by the handle or something like that, and I didn't clean it up well enough, then I have candle dye all over my hands.
Right.
And which is fine, but then you're just gonna have yellow and red, purple hands for the rest of the day or something. So, yeah, just trying to minimize all that, and the cleanliness did just start wiping down. The glass, luckily, I've invested in like high quality glass. It's pretty durable now.
Yeah.
Early on, I definitely broke some cheaper glass plates. And in the middle of a show, like cut my hand even, stuff like that.
No.
But yeah, so like they're pretty durable. Every once in a while they'll get like a little chip in them or something like that. But like luckily enough, they hold up really well. And as long as you're semi careful with them, they're good to go.
Okay. Is there any reason why you would switch to something like a very high quality acrylic as opposed to glass? I imagine the properties, firm, reflective stuff, maybe it gets scratches, but are there alternatives to glass?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is the transparency.
Sure.
It has to be fully transparent to get the right, actual color. Otherwise it's going to be faded or whatever.
Of course.
One thing that I actually want to try out is so a medium that I use instead of like mineral oil and isopropyl alcohol is vegetable glycerin.
Okay.
And when you use vegetable glycerin, you can actually like draw on it more. So like you put in some watercolors or candle dyes or whatever, and you'll get that color drop, but it won't disperse like it would in the alcohol or the mineral oil is nearly as much. And so you can kind of like put some in there and it'll kind of draw with it, and it'll keep its form rather than like disperse. Or the disbursement of it is more minimal. It's very slow.
Okay.
And so, and then if you do that in a convex glass, it starts to all kind of go to the middle because of the gravity.
Right.
So what I actually like to watch is a lot of Japanese light artists. They use like I don't know if it's acrylic or whatnot, but usually it's like a plastic, or probably acrylic, and they'll get like a flat like box with like walls, and they'll do the vegetable glycerin in that so that it stays flat. They can draw on it, and it keeps its form better. And then so I love how they do that. But like the most recent person I've been seeing doing it is what he does is once you add alcohol to it, it goes crazy. It totally changes, and you can never get back to it. Once you add something to the glycerin,
sure,
it's in that next stage.
Okay.
And so he does a lot of like, I don't know what you call it, like maybe avant-garde, just unique light shows to like avant-garde music, just more eccentric music, kind of less common, less mainstream maybe is how I'd word it. And I mean, he'll be like flashing. He'll put his hands like underneath the lights to kind of get like a flash and stuff like that. And he'll shake it. He'll shake it while he's doing something.
Okay.
Or, other people will get like straws and blow. So it has like a little bit of like a wind blow to it and stuff like that. And so he does all these other extra techniques that you can do some of these things to my normal like analog thing, but with the glycerin, it's just a different show.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's a great option of alternative way of doing it, I guess. So.
Okay.
Or even having like, if you have multiple projectors, you can do that on one. You can do let's say normal on another, and there's like over 9 different like plate setups you can kind of do, at least, and that's just everything. It's all about imagination. The more you can imagine, the more you can do. But there's like at least 9 basic plate setups.
Okay. Speaking of imagination and setups, when you go into a show, do you kind of have a vision for how you want things to kind of go, your setup, how, the lights and the liquids progress over time? Do you try to, time it to music or the mood or the vibe? What kind of considerations go into show planning?
Yeah, some are more than others. Excuse me. I would say sometimes I get requests by the bands or the people running the show.
Yeah.
For example, one request was by a friend in their band, and they wanted me to do like a black and white set.
Interesting.
And, yeah, it was before I was still kind of learning a lot. I've never done black and white or even have really black intentionally in my setup. And so yeah, I attempted. I think I checked into it, looked into it, and found a way of doing it. After looking back now, I would have been able to implement that way better and be able to go from like one band that was all color, and then when their band started, just go like a cut to black and white and or something like that. I could have made a cool transition into it or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, so I've had requests like that. Otherwise, sometimes, yeah, if it's just like a last minute show, like a lot of the time, most of my shows, I'd say I just set it up and just go for it. spontaneous, just whatever comes to mind, just doing whatever just feels whatever I'm in the mood to.
Okay.
But other times there's certain other bands that maybe they have a certain vibe, or like, yeah, they have a certain color palette they want, that they maybe sometimes even ask for in advance, or I just feel like I think you guys should have this color or something like that.
Sure.
Then I'll lean into that. But definitely as every band breaks down and gets on, another band gets on, I have kind of a space in between each bands, and half the time I'll remake some plates. I'll dump them out and like redo them.
Yeah.
Not only because if they do get a little muddy from me overworking them or from adding too much colors, or if I'm just not feeling, or just want the band to have a different color vibe or something like that.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'll change my glasses on my different projectors around. So sometimes like, okay, this middle projector is kind of the focus.
Yeah.
I'm going to change these colors over to this projector and put these over here. And then that can totally change the vibe as well, just where I focus the colors at.
Yeah.
Plus my different projectors have different hues kind of, or tints of color to them. So like one is more like a blue kind of tint hue, like that it shows, and the other ones are like more reddish.
Yep.
Or orange. And so having the different plates on those can make a slight difference and all that too. So.
Okay. No, that's really cool. Speaking of setups, I noticed at the show that I've met you at, you had this, how do I put it? It was like this acrylic box with a bunch of different layers, and you had an air pump pushing bubbles throughout it, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
have the different layers of the bubbles going through and the different layers with different colors. It was fascinating.
Yeah, so that's a new technique or machine that I've recently just started using. Actually, I think that was the first live show I ever used it at.
Yeah.
And so that piece of equipment is called a splotoscope.
Fun.
Yeah, and so it's been around for a while, but I never knew what it was actually called or how to get one or anything like that. And a lot of light artists make their own equipment.
Okay.
Or maybe they'll be lucky to find one person willing to make it for them and sell it or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I found a guy on either Instagram or Facebook or something like that. It might have been on the preservation group. And he makes these splotoscopes. I think he's in California. His name's Aiden. I forget his last name, but I could always, if someone asks, I could push it. And so I got one of his first early edition models, and he's already kind of upgraded like 3 times since then in the last 6 months, like making them better, making them thicker, making more bubbles and all this stuff. And they're really affordable. He makes them really affordable. He wants people to like use them, and he wants to get it out there. Yeah. So like, I mean, even people on the preservation group, they're like, why aren't you selling these for more? He's like, because I want it to get out, And so I've already bought like 3 off of them. I broke the first 2. It was my fault. The first one I dropped and it cracked or something. The first one I put water in too fast and it broke the seal or something like that.
Yeah.
The second one I had it upright and it just kind of fell over and it cracked one of the plates.
Sure.
So I was actually using the it was a 3 chamber, and I used the double chamber left for that show. So I was just using 2 of the 3 chambers because one of them I broke. And I have a new one now that's like even better. And that does all 3 chambers. It's from him. It's like thicker glass and everything. It's not going to leak. So I haven't even used that one live yet.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what that is. So yeah, it's basically an air pump in 3 chambers of glass, and a bubble will go through each one, and I'll put a different color in each one of those. And for that, I actually used food dye. I tried my first one. I tried it with using my normal like water or candle dyes or watercolors with and all that, but it was good. It worked, but it's a lot harder to clean up because that stuff wants to stay in there. Food dye with just water and maybe with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol works a lot better in that machine. So
yeah, because you're dealing with viscosities and all the other stuff. Like you said, things might get sticky isn't the right word, but it just, like you said, it wants to kind of stay in there. It makes it difficult to clean.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I feel like with all the different apparatuses that you're describing and the approaches that people take, it really does feel like the sky's the limit in terms of this craft. So long as things are, I guess, transparent and offer some, shape or color or property, you really can go nuts with this and try anything you want.
Yeah. I mean, some of the other techniques is like you can use saran wrap on the projector, and then me and my wife have done that once. We did it once for a wedding, and she kind of did that and then made like a heart out of it. And then she colored it in. She just put colors right on the saran wrap, and then it looks like a crinkled up like heart.
Yeah,
it's not moving, but it's there, and then you can do like our normal lights over it or something. Yeah, and then there's things where people will use like colored wheels where it'll spin in front of the projector or something like that, and so it'll change the color of the background on top of whatever you're doing.
Okay.
It's like just like a career. It's like a think of a circle with like the primary colors in it, like red, yellow, blue, and it's just like a transparent like
Yeah.
sheet of color, and it just kind of rotates slowly or fast or whatever. And some people will add things like that to their shows. And there's a lot more digital equipment on there now too. Like, or actually, if I go back to old school, there's like some people use slide projectors. Well, they'll put it in the old slide things, and you have to do some modification to them a little bit, but it pretty much heats up the oil in that little like glass disc or whatever, and it'll boil it pretty much, and that'll move it on its own.
Oh.
And it's still like the old school slide projector things. There's a handful of ones that are like suggested for doing it, but so that's another style. Like there's so many different things and different little machines that people are doing that I haven't even like touched on yet. Like I'm aware of them, but I'm like, yeah, it's just like, it really is like, and I'm sure like people can create even more stuff if they really put their mind to it.
Do you think that there are any gaps in the apparatuses that you see in this space? Is there something that you wish was created or you want to see?
That's a good question. I mean, so like some of the newer technology that's come out, I forget what it's called, but there is a machine based out of the UK. I think I met the original inventor of it. I believe his name was Neil something. He was visiting in Seattle randomly with his wife, and he like posted on the preservation group or something like, yeah, I'm gonna be in the area. Does anybody want to meet up,
Okay.
whatever? And I was like, I'll meet up with you,
Yeah.
hang out. And like me and my wife took him to Browers and for Fremont, for like a dinner, like early dinner or something
Sure.
like that, and just talked briefly about whatever. Nothing. Didn't really talk about lights that much, but
Okay.
but anyway, so he makes this machine, and it's kind of like a small globe with like a projector on it, and it's kind of like a set and go like liquid light show. Like you just like plug it in, and like it can do like a liquid light kind of show.
Okay.
It's not as like hands on or analog or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that kind of tech is really cool. I can see something like that growing or being modified to expand on or something like that. Just to be able to plug and go was just super convenient.
Yeah, it would be
And
really, really nice.
less messy and all that kind of stuff. So stuff like that. If there was some way, yeah, it's hard to incorporate like that into the analog side, to make it more artistic and like,
Right.
original. And if there was some way to like cross into those two things where you could just like make an easy analog setup somehow, like that would be awesome. But I just don't know how. Yeah, like I said, I don't know how to implement a lot of these things. I can imagine everything. I feel like I would imagine would be like either not doable or take someone with more brain power to make happen, I guess.
Sure, yeah. So there's an interesting comparison that I think is there, but I want to see if you agree. So when cameras made the switch from film, analog to digital, the technology kept progressing in the digital aspect of sides, and I feel like the technology on the film side kind of stagnated, in which there was no more active development. People really weren't pushing the envelope. So if they wanted to get cool new innovations, you'd almost always see it on the digital side.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a similar thing happening here with the analog lights that you're doing and now the digital lights that are coming along?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I would imagine that's probably exactly what happened with projectors. Like once they went digital, people forgot about the analog. Were like, this is irrelevant.
Yeah.
The only time where someone prefers the analog, and I would guess, at least in this field, is for that warmer color. You want the warmth, and you just can't recreate that with digital.
Okay.
And so, which is reason enough for us to like want that newer technology in the analog, but not enough reason for people actually doing the
Gotcha,
and then,
gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, because when I hear like, the desire for having a nice all-in-one analog, I'm sure there's some crowd of people, well, they'll just say, "Oh, it exists, it's digital," but that's not what you want, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, in a lot of ways, I imagine you can't really get the best of both worlds. You really have to settle for one or the other.
Fair enough, like most things in life, right?
Yeah. So,
Where do you think the art form itself will be in, 5, 10, 15, however many years' time?
I don't see it moving too much farther than it already is.
Okay.
Other than, like really digital. Most people are going to probably go digital.
Yeah.
Just because of the convenience
Yeah.
of it. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, like I said, I just like to see more people doing it. Like it just, I hopefully, with the progression I've already seen in the last 5 years, that in another 5 years, more people locally will be doing it. and just, yeah, maybe, I don't know, ideally it'd be nice if certain clubs or venues, bars, like how I'm going to do it, like create a
Yeah.
permanent installation for it, create a space that you could dedicate in your venue or your bar or whatnot, to where you can just have it set up and go. Um, it's just going to be hard to do, or a lot of unwilling people to do it, just because it is messy. People, the public is on, is like, you can't you're just unpredictable pretty much. People will break things, make messes, bump into things, and last thing you need is someone cutting themselves because of glass plate, and then
Right.
insurance reasons and all that stuff. So what I'd like to see, or what I see possible, is probably not likely, I guess I would say. So I don't see it progressing too much farther other than what it already is, but I have high hopes, I guess. So
Yeah, fair enough. So we've talked a lot about, the industry and the community and the tech and all the other stuff. I'd love to know about your experience personally with it. What's one of the, I guess, standout moments that you have in doing this? What's one of the moments that you felt proud or felt really good about it?
well, that's a good question. I would say there's certain events or shows that I've done where it was like kind of milestones, I guess, and how I progressed, and what's gotten me to where I am. So like when I first started doing the lights, I didn't have like a name, like a light stage name or whatever. But there was a band called Year of the Cobra that I did a show for out. I think that show was out in Bremerton, and after the show, the Amy, the vocalist, bass player for the band, came up to me, and she pretty much gave me my name. She's like, "You're a liquid light wizard,"
Oh,
and I was like, "Oh, that's a great name. Like, can I use that as my handle?" Pretty much. And so ever since then, I've been known as the Liquid Light Wizard. And then I got online, of course, and tried to look around and make sure there was no one else with that
but
name.
yeah.
There's a lot of similar names with the Liquid Light area.
Yeah.
A lot of people go by Liquid Light something, but no one really used Liquid Light Wizard. And so I was like, all right, I'm taking it.
Yeah.
It's mine. And so for over, I forget how many years I've been doing lights, but like if I've been doing it for about 10, maybe about 8 of them, I've been doing it under Liquid Light Wizard. And so that was like kind of the first kind of like, okay, I'm getting good, people appreciate this, people like this.
Yeah.
And then I started getting booked for some other bigger bands or shows or whatever, and people actually started paying me. Because when I first did it, I was either doing it for free, or I was doing it for like $20 to cover my cost of materials or
Of
something like that.
course, yeah.
And then I started doing, and I did a show for this company. I think it was like Blind Tiger is what they were going under for a while, and they were like kind of putting shows together. And they had me do a show for it was like a festival in Everett. It was like where they walked to different bars. I forget what they called it. But
Okay. Yeah.
so I did a show for that, and the guy paid me like $200.
Hey,
And I
good
was
for
like,
you.
I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I was like, okay, I can actually make money maybe doing this.
Yeah.
And so I just started doing more shows, trying to charge more and all that.
Okay.
But once I got over that $100 mark, people didn't want to book me as much. It's an expensive thing, especially for such a small show. Bands don't have money to put in that kind of thing. So I was kind of doing like a sliding scale, and just kind of like what can you afford? If you're my friend, I'll hook you up. If it's some random person I don't know your music, or maybe don't like care for your music, I'm gonna charge more, kind of thing.
Yep.
And then I started doing more festivals where it was like, okay, $200 to $500. Like if I'm gonna be there for a day or two, like all day or 2 days, like I need more money, to cover my costs and all that stuff. And so as I progressed, I started seeing, just I felt better about what I was doing. I was getting more comfortable doing. I felt like I was kind of hitting these milestones in a way. But then I finally did, I got asked to do liquid lights for the Doors, the remaining
Ooh.
Doors members. Yeah. And
Okay.
so I didn't know it was for the Doors initially. I actually got asked for by Paul Allen when he was still alive. And then he, because I was the only person in the area doing it. So he actually was reaching out to a local company, and they found me, and because I was the only person doing it
Right.
locally available. And Mad Alchemy from San Francisco, I think they considering bringing him up here, but he's like really expensive. They didn't want at the time to shipping him up there, and it was like last minute. Like they needed me in like a couple days or something.
Oh,
like that.
okay. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I was working a full-time job, and I was like, I'm gonna make this happen. And but I actually had to get like a business license to do it all.
Yeah.
Because they had to pay me legit and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, let me just get all that situated. And yeah, went out and did it for Paul Allen at his recording studio on Mercer Island. At the time, I actually had to sign an NDA, but that was years ago, and he's passed away. So like, we'll see if I get in trouble for that. But but otherwise, yeah, I did it for the remaining Doors members, which was yeah, Robbie Krieger and John Densmore, the drummer and the guitarist. Carlos Santana was there. A few other, I was like Willie Nelson's sons were there, and
Wow.
a couple other, like handful
Yeah,
of,
big
of
names.
small of yeah, semi big names and such like that. So Chris Novoselic was there. And so I wasn't allowed to take pictures or anything. I wasn't allowed to talk to
Of
anybody and all
course,
that. So
yeah.
I just kept in my little bubble, did my thing. And Carlos Santana actually came up to me, and like I went over to get like I had brought a beer with me, and I went over to sip my beer real quick while I was in the middle of doing something, and he came over and he did a little like thing, and I was like kind of give him a nod and drink my beer and went back to what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of cool. And then so they liked it enough. They actually had me do it. They asked me to do it the next night
Oh,
again.
yeah.
And so instead of at the recording studio, they wanted me to do it at Mopop, where they were actually doing the Doors 50th anniversary.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, all right, we'll do it. You know, we'll figure it out how to make it happen, because it's in I believe they call it Sky Church, which is like this huge room, huge giant screen, and I couldn't really do what I would normally do on such a big screen.
Right.
And I don't think they wanted me in there among all these celebrities, because it was like a special event, like
Okay.
like invite only, you know,
Sure.
kind of thing. So what they did is they had me come in there, and they had me go into the theater room, like the next room over somewhere, and they videoed me what I was doing. I set up like 4 projectors in this theater room, and I had like 4 like kind of main colors kind of going on to help overlap and all that stuff. And they just videoed what I was doing on the screen, on the main screen, and then they fed that into the Sky Church, into the main room. And then their visual guy, sound guy, whatever, manipulated and did things off of what I would do. So he was like zooming into things that I was doing, and just I didn't get to really see what he was doing. I
Okay.
saw some video afterwards, because some of it was posted to public, you know.
Sure.
But like I was like totally out of control. I was just like, I'm just doing whatever. Like I don't even know if I can't even remember if they pipe into the music, so I could at least kind of play to the music or
Yeah.
something like that. But it was just like I'd never done anything like that before.
It's a weird
Yeah,
experience.
like I was in a room by myself with my wife, and we were just like doing lights on this screen, and like just like, all right, I guess
Hope it's good.
yeah, like yeah, I hope it's good. I don't know what anybody's seen or anything. So and again, so like that when we were in there too, of all the celebrity people, the only person who came in there was Carlos Santana.
Okay.
And he came in with like his little entourage, and I think it was his drummer or the drummer for the night
Yeah.
as well. And he gave us a wave and all that as he like walked up the other side of the room and went out and whatever. Just kind of, so he's pretty much the only person who acknowledged me out of both nights.
Sure.
So, but yeah, so like that was kind of the highlight. Yeah, and the only reason why you have any video or footage of that is because of what was posted publicly. So like Chris Novoselic posted a picture that was taken of him at the recording studio that I found on the internet. So I have that picture saved in my files, and then like there's a couple photos I saved from the Sky Church Mopop night that I saved to the best shots that I saw of what they took or whatever. So, but yeah,
That's really cool. I mean, that entire journey from getting your name Liquid Light Wizard all the way up to that, like, it must feel incredibly validating. Because, like you said, one, getting a name is such a defining moment. At least for me, like, this very podcast captured curiosity. None of this felt real until I had that name there. And then once that name existed, I'm like, okay, one, did anyone take it? No, cool, this is mine. I could start rallying around it and building a concept and really, building the foundation of that to what it is today. I imagine something is very similar with your journey, your career, and just your personal identity attached to that. That name is very important.
yeah. There's a lot of people to this day that's what they know me as, and that's what they refer to. They're like, oh, you're Liquid Light Wizard.
Yeah.
They don't even know about all my dozens of other hobbies and jobs and all that. Like so some people know me for some things, and some people know me for others, and some people knows me as Liquid Light Wizard.
Yeah, we all have many faces.
Yeah.
But also like the milestone and progressions that you said, one, getting paid to do the thing, that is another monumental milestone. Like I felt that when I first did photography. I started with the real estate photography because it's in demand and it's very clear that people need this, and it's very easy to explain what you do. But like the first time I got like I don't know, I shot a bunch of free houses, but the first time I got like a $200 check, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm not going to be able to pay rent with this by itself, but it's something, and it's a proof of a concept. And it just gave me that confidence to keep going down that path like I imagined it did for you. So you mentioned that you also do this with your wife. What's it like, doing liquid lights as a collaborative effort?
It's definitely helpful. It's a lot to take on by yourself.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, most of my shows have definitely been by myself. 2 to 3 projectors by myself is a lot to handle.
Yeah.
Ideally, 1 projector per person would be best. That way they can just focus on what they're doing. It's always exactly what they want, and you're not having to back and forth and trying to juggle pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, when she helps me out, it's incredibly helpful, especially when if I'm doing a show as well, like if I'm performing on stage and she can do it for me while I'm up there, and I'll
Oh,
just take over at before or after. Um, so yeah, and then she like anybody else has her own way of doing it, has her own imagination, and so she's like, I find a lot of times that she's actually better at sometimes at setting up the colors than I am. But then I might be better at coming in and like enhancing them or doing the actual squish or something like the actual movement to the band. So yeah, because like how you do it while the band's playing makes a big difference. And you asked kind
yeah.
of earlier, like doing it to the music and stuff like that. And yeah, like doing it to the music is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And every person I've had help me has such a different style of how they attack that. And so most people tend to overdo it, go too fast, go too much squish or not enough squish or something like that. It's not quite exactly what I would want to do it.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it just all that makes such a big difference. And yeah, so when she helps me, it's just a lot. Yeah, me and her work really well together. She has things that she can do better than I can, and then I can come in and do things better than her maybe. And so yeah, it's a good team. It's a good teamwork, and it's nice to spend time with her to
Of
do it and
course.
all that. Setting it up, cleaning it, all that. It's a lot of work. Bringing it, I have to load it into my car, load it out of my car. That takes a lot of time as well. So it's a lot of work. If I do a light show for even like a 3 hour, 3 bands for a 3 hour set night, whatever, that's really like a 6 to 8 hour day for me. Cause I have to, yeah. So that's why I like half the work people don't even see, and that's getting all the equipment ready, setting it all up, cleaning it all up, breaking it down, putting it back away, putting it in my car, taking it out of my car. Like it's a lot more work than people realize. Then I have to store it all and all that too. It's a lot of
Yeah.
equipment to store. So yeah, when I got her, it helps tremendously. But I'm glad when she's willing and able to do it.
No, of course. Yeah. Is there any like coordination involved? Like when two musicians play it together, assuming the same key, like, you play off each other and you kind of match, vibes and moods and styles and blah blah blahs. Is it similar with lights too? So where you like, hey, let's work together so when the band does this, we're both in sync and this happens? Or is it more just kind of go with the flow and you kind of bounce off of each other?
I say normally it's go with the flow. Sometimes I've tried to coordinate a little bit with like talk with the person I'm working with, because
Yeah.
like even if she's not helping me, or sometimes I do have a friend help me or whatnot. I'll just be like, go slower, or like do more squish or something, like little advice tidbits, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
I like to leave a lot of it open for them to do really whatever they want, because I want them to enjoy it and I don't want to micromanage what they're doing.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so like sometimes a little bit, but otherwise generally I like just go with the flow, I would say.
Can you define squish and what you mean by that?
Yeah, squish. So squish is a method that you use with the plates. So like this, you have 2 plates. You have the bottom plate and then you have like the top plate. And what I do is I kind of rest my hands on top of the bottom plate, but I have my fingers underneath the top plate, so I can pick up the plate and add my thumbs on top, so I can pick up the plate and I can push it back down.
So you're actually like squishing it.
So I'm actually
Yeah.
taking the top plate and I'm squishing it in and out of that bottom plate.
Ah.
And when you do that, you get these really my preferred like squishy like bubbles.
Kind of
Is they kind of go in and out. Yeah, you can kind of go in and out or move it around like in a figure eight or whatnot. And like a lot of that is definitely up to your imagination on how you move that, how you squish it, how much you squish it,
Yeah.
the speed at which you squish it. And so that is really my favorite part of doing the liquid lights, is actually the squish.
Okay.
And I like that's actually one of the plate styles of, like I said, at least the 9 options. There's a squish plate, and that's probably one of my favorites. And you can have different variances of squish plates. You can have them more squishy, less squishy, depending on the viscosity and how much ratio of mineral oil to alcohol and whatnot.
Sure.
So yeah, that's actually probably the the hardest thing to teach people at first too, because like 90% of the time when I have someone try it out for the first time, whether it's just random people coming up and I'm like, yeah, go for it, or actually having friends helping me, and I'm trying to teach them the squish is difficult. Most people just can't get it until they've tried it multiple times.
It's a feel thing.
It's definitely a feel thing. And then even when you can do it, then being able to do it well is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So so like that's probably my biggest skill in doing the lights, is just being able to do a good squish, especially to certain types of bands. So there's a reason why liquid lights is kind of project or use more for like psychedelic music, like slower music.
Yeah.
Because when you can get that really slow squish and you can and you go along with the music, that's what really adds to the vibe. When you have, like, I've done lights for all types of bands, everything from heavy metal to surf rock to EDM to psychedelic. I mean, you name it, I've probably done lights to it, kind of thing. And I can do lights to like super fast punk metal music or whatnot, but like it's a totally different style. I don't typically squish as much when I'm doing it, or if I am squishing with those bands, that's a lot faster of a squish. Maybe more spinning than I would normally do with those kind of bands or something like that. And so yeah, so like my preferred method would be usually slow squish with slower psychedelic bands. That's usually the funnest lights that I have doing, I would say. So
Okay, that's pretty cool. Because I don't know if there's like a basic setup, but when I'm thinking of a basic setup for you, I imagine some number of plates, and then there are various different techniques that you can do to them. So one is you spin the plates. Two is you squish it. Are there any other types of techniques that are in that?
yeah, so there's a couple of variances and like combinations of. Sometimes what I'll do is like when I'm doing two projectors at once, I'll kind of try to squish one with one hand and the other, and sometimes I'll kind of pick them up and slosh them, like so on the screen they kind of look like they're kind of sloshing in and out of each other. Yeah, or like when I'm doing two projectors, I'll spin one and then I'll squish the other, and then I'll spin it when I'm done squishing it, and I'll work the other one. So it's kind of going back and forth thing. One thing about with the squishing is like if you don't squish it at all, you just get a certain effect. So like if you want to get bubbles into it, or even like smaller bubbles, and the more you squish it, the kind of smaller the bubbles will get. And then if you leave it alone, those bubbles will just kind of blob up and become bigger bubbles again. So like I'm always trying to keep a certain level of
Bubbliness.
Yeah. And so that's one method a way as well. And then when you start doing like the different plates, like let's say no alcohol and just water, then you get a different squish, a different plate, a different spin. So a lot of it's really, I would say the main thing is squish and spin, and then you have variances of combinations of kind of thing. But like in my experience, that's mostly, but it's basically all you can do to a point, other than maybe like I was talking about, like kind of swishing them up. So, but that's what's helpful if you have one person per projector. Then if I had that more often, maybe I would have came up with some more combination techniques.
Okay.
So like when they're like, if they're spinning it one way, I'll sometimes try to spin the opposite, so we're going into each other or out of each other.
Okay.
Or when they're squishing a certain way, I'll squish with them or counter them, kind of thing. So like something I can't do with two on my own, I actually need someone else there.
Right.
So a lot of it is just like variances of the squish, variants of the spins, and stuff like that. So I mean, that's on top of my head, I think that's really the most basic way of really just, that's all you can do for the most part. You are kind of limited on what you do.
Yeah, but I mean, even within that, there's infinite depth, because like with a guitar, all you can do is strum or finger pick, but like there's infinite variety and variations to that.
Yeah. There are like other little nuance things like with the guitar that, yeah. So yeah, it in some ways, like the basic things are really all you can do with slight variances of those. And yeah.
So a closing tradition that we have on the show is the previous guest leaves a question for the current guest, not knowing who the current guest will be. So the question that's been left for you is, if you could learn your craft all over again, what's something that you would do differently to save yourself a bit of heartache?
Oh, hey, it's a really good question. If I had to do it all over again, I mean, most of the time in my life, I would probably answer this with anything. It was like, just, I would never change it, because the way I've learned it is what got me to where I am.
Sure.
But if I had to test an alternative method to see how different it would change me, I mean, it'd probably practice at home first. So
Sure. Okay.
practice at home first. I mean, as much as I love to be able to boast, like I only do this live, you know, like that's how good I am. Is like, whatever you see it is that's just me learning spontaneous. You know, I would be so much better if I would have just practiced at home first.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like with most, skill-based things, practice really is essential. Like you just got to put the reps in. It really is just time doing the activity before you get good and you get a feel for things and that intuition.
Practice really does make perfect. So,
It does, yeah.
or close to. No one's perfect, but close to it.
I was always told that you don't practice to, what was that phrase? I'm gonna butcher this horribly, but you don't practice to become perfect, you perfectly practice, because the thing that you do over and over is how it's going to be. Um, yeah, I probably butchered that a lot, but you understand the concept of it.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you, and where would you like to draw people's attention to?
Well, the best way to find my stuff is probably on Instagram,
Yeah.
Liquid Light Wizard on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page as well, but I normally just post to Instagram nowadays. That's really my only source for my information for doing lights. Yeah, I'd say like that. Go to Instagram. So
Okay.
yeah.
I will, you can send me these links, but I will put all of the links to this stuff in the description down below. This way it's very easy for people to find you. I love drawing, people's attention to people that, do cool and unique things, and discoverability is a huge, huge part of that. So I'll make that very easy for people. Brandon, thank you so much for coming out here. I really appreciate you sharing your story, your craft. I've said this a couple of times, but it really is one of the most unique crafts that I've seen. And I've seen a lot of creative efforts. So thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers.